r/AskReddit by Redmond Dts. What couldn't you believe you had to explain to another adult? Why a room below sea level on a cruise ship would not have a balcony. That no matter how much you might want to put a camo pattern on your walls, you, not the paint, have to determine what that pattern looks like. And you will also have to purchase multiple cans of paint tinted differently, because camo doesn't come out of a can that way. Volunteered in a charity shop. Lady came to the counter with a top and asked if I could look in the back for one of the same color, but a larger size. Tried to explain we don't do that, because we're a charity shop. She insisted that other shops, like H&M, have done that for her. Wouldn't take no for an answer. Eventually I just went in the back for a few minutes, made a cup of tea for a co-worker, and came out saying we don't have any. She got mad at that too. Op shop, Australian for charity shop. We had a family come shop and place a massive heap of clothing on the counter, which they carefully, and with much discussion, divided into two. None of this discussion happened in English, so imagine our surprise when they said this one we will pay for, this one we will have for free. They did not have any of the vouchers the charity gives out for that sort of thing, and their free pile was all very expensive brands. That was a conversation I could not physically listen to. Very painful. In regards to the North and South Poles, neither is the one that is always hot. North is not whichever way you're facing. It is if you're standing on the South Pole. That's the hot one, right? My husband had to explain to a co-worker that she couldn't take a train from the United States to Europe. She insisted she had to because she didn't like flying. That you have to have a printer to print things at home. Tech support, and I wish I was lying. When I worked at a doctor's clinic, I had a lady on the phone wanting to book an appointment to have her flu shot. She specifically asked it to be a telephone appointment. I could not believe that I had to explain to her that we cannot inject her through the phone. I had to explain to my mom that my daughter was growing in my uterus and not my stomach, so the hot sauce on my burrito wasn't going to cause her skin burns. I also explained if she were growing in my stomach would certainly cause way worse burns than hot sauce. It was then that I understood why the school nurse had to explain to me in 5th grade why I kept bleeding through my pants every month at school and not my mom. That New Zealand, the country we were both born, raised and living in, is not in Europe. Edit to answer most of your questions. Her reasoning is that when she fills out forms and has to tick a box for her ethnicity, she ticks New Zealand European. She thought that option was there because we are European and therefore in Europe. I had to explain to her that just means she is of European descent. That her ancestors lived in Europe. I also had to explain that not every New Zealander ticks that box. That there are other ethnicities here too. Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, and Italy is not a town in France. Same guy. My sister dated him for far too long. Africa is a continent, and not a country. I had a former co-worker point to Africa on a map and ask if it was Puerto Rico. It was clearly labeled Africa, as well as labeling all of the countries within it. She was born, raised, and just moved a few years prior from Puerto Rico. That each country does not, in fact, have its own sun. We cannot hold period blood in. It was at work. I had to explain that if they didn't do their job, me or the next shift had to. I had a lengthy discussion with a co-worker who suggested an efficiency, which was essentially passing her work to another employee. I explained over and over that the work still needs to be done by someone. She didn't back down until our boss agreed with me. I hope this isn't too racy for this sub. I had to explain to a grown college-educated adult that no, but stuff does not cause AIDS. That no, if both parties are HIV negative, they cannot create AIDS by engaging in this activity. No Daniel, that's not how viruses work. When you save a file on Windows, the save window actually lets you save the file into a particular folder. You don't have to go into your recent items to find it and then move it to where you want it to be saved. This person had been working an office job at a computer for more than 5 years at that point. I once taught someone that had been typing on computers for several decades that you can hold shift plus letter to get a capital letter and that you don't have to turn caps lock on and off at the beginning of each sentence. I worked with a woman who would print PDFs, then fax them. She didn't know how to attach them to an email. She was a very successful realtor, and this was in 2014. That driving north meant the whole trip was uphill. I laughed at her until I realized she meant it, ended up laughing at myself, cause there's no way I was going to explain it to her. That her power was shut off because she didn't pay her electric bill for 3 straight months, and the letters on neon yellow paper from the power company were sent to warn her of this happening. She thought she was legally entitled to free electricity because it's a requirement for human survival. Edit to at, she wasn't in need. She worked a very well-paying job and she enjoyed shopping for expensive things. This was not one of those situations where she needed assistance or mercy. She needed a foot lodged firmly in the backside and the power company put on its boots. I was picking up Italian liras one time, 1999, pre-euros, from a bank in Tennessee. The teller brought me the envelope. When I opened it to count the money, she looked at me with total surprise and asked, "Do other countries have different money?" A bank teller. That raw meat juices, especially that of chicken, should in no way come in contact with other foods. I learned this in 8th grade home ec, so I was 13 years old. I had to explain to a 40-year-old that no, you can't put grilled chicken back on an unwashed cutting board that still has raw chicken juices. Used to work at a daycare. One day a little mouse entered the premises and caused an uproar until we caught and released it in the playground. After the whole ordeal, one of my colleagues, who was the dumbest person I've ever met, said, "Let's hope it didn't lay eggs anywhere." I was too stunned to speak and just stared at her while my room leader friend said, in the most done with this shit way, "Mice don't lay eggs name," and walked off. Edit. I love how so many people in these replies are trying to find a different interpretation of what she must have meant or say that she must have been joking. But no, unfortunately I have to tell you she was 100% of the opinion that mice lay eggs because she even doubled down about it later. I had to explain to my two co-workers that it wasn't some magic fairy that was throwing away their coffee cups. They were joking around one day that their old coffee cups always disappeared by the next day, and I had to tell them it was me and that I had to start doing it because they kept getting left in the way and being knocked over. I was off for a few days and came back and there were cups everywhere. That dogs are artificially bred and that there aren't wild golden retrievers, wild chihuahuas, and wild Maltese just running about that we are catching to make into pets. I had to explain to a restaurant worker that eggs are not dairy. Chickens do not have mammary glands. Someone who is allergic to dairy can eat eggs and chicken. Mayonnaise, containing eggs and oil, is therefore not dairy. She was looking at me like I was the stupid one the whole time. That the Aztecs and Incans are not interchangeable, they were in completely different parts of the Americas, and that neither of them built the Nazca lines. But especially not the Aztecs, who were not in freaking Peru. This person kept trying to tell me it was up to interpretation, like no it's not, it's geography. The difference between Chinese and Japanese people. People on the internet can and will lie to you. Incremental tax brackets. A dude at my work thought he was going to make less money if he got a raise. I actually hear this a lot. Whales don't lay eggs. Well, there goes my plan for the world's biggest omelette. That women do not all have their period at the beginning of the month all around the world at the same time. I work in travel. I've had to explain time zones more than you'd believe. So, if you leave Sydney at 2 PM and fly about 14 hours, crossing the international data line, you arrive in LA at noon, about 2 hours before you left. I've watched this emoji happen in real time. And then on the way back, a day just mysteriously disappears. You do have to admit it sounds weird. That you can still get pregnant with a woman on top. Gravity doesn't work like that. Similarly, that you can get pregnant if you have sex in a jacuzzi tub. He thought the water being hot made that not possible. He was over 40 when we had this chat. I had to explain to someone you can't buy like 2 pounds of lunch meat and eat it for a month. The concept of things spoiling was new to him. To be fair, we were both college students and he was living alone for the first time. I used to work at a coffee shop and had to explain what filling something halfway meant to a woman I was training. She didn't understand the concept of half. That an item damaged in a car crash did not qualify as a manufactured defect covered under warranty. The store refund policy was 90 days and she had a receipt over a year old. From a vet tech. That the ticks on a male dog were actually nipples. And that male dogs have nipples. Just like every other mammal. That a rabbit that clearly has visible testicles was a male. That you cannot feed an animal that is strictly a carnivore, a ferret for your information, a vegan diet. That thing so sick when it came in. That yes, when you have two animals, same species, of opposite genders in the house, and they aren't spayed or neutered, they will breed. Even if they are mother and son, brother and sister, different ages, different sizes, different breeds, etc. You'd be shocked at how many people didn't think this would happen. Like, do you understand biology at all? That cold sores are herpes. I've also had to explain repeatedly that mice are not baby rats. Like, a lot. Probably not as many times as I've had to explain that a pony is not a baby horse. A friend asked me how the sun knows that clocks have changed when we have daylight savings. When I was 19, I explained to a middle-aged woman that Jesus was not blonde-haired, blue-eyed, spoke English and from America. I had to explain that Christ was not his last name. How to make ramen. The directions are on the packet. I pointed that out. Their response was, I thought it was too simple to have directions on it. If it didn't have directions, someone would have put it in the toaster, complained when it caught fire, then said there should be directions. I had to explain to a fully grown adult that yes, your car's keyless entry remote does indeed have a battery in it, just like a TV remote, and yes the button stopped working because the battery is dead and you need to replace it. I also had to tell him that if you're going to buy huge bags of dry dog food and keep it in your garage, which you leave open most of the time, you might want to actually close the bag and maybe even put the closed bag in a container with a lid instead of letting it sit completely open and then always wondering why the dog food is full of bugs, spoils fast and attracts rats and raccoons. I wish I could say he was a super brilliant engineer or something, but yeah, no. I had to explain to a friend of mine who had grown up with me that no, you cannot vote for Trump in the Australian election. He is not a candidate for anything here. My mother once had to explain to a fellow teacher that humans only have one appendix. That the moon wasn't self-illuminating from within. Orange juice from concentrate doesn't come from a place called concentrate. That the sun was a star. No it isn't, it's his sun. I learned that when I was like 6. I was amazed in my old workplace how many young adults, like early 20s or so, couldn't tell the time from the wall clock. That's all folks. Thank you for watching. If you like videos like this one, why not like and subscribe for more? Have a nice evening.